Hello, I'm here. Oh, I should have put some chapstick on. Can you grab my I have some chapstick in my wallet situation. Oh, it's on the counter. Hello, hi Sierra. Hello everyone. Thank you. Okay.
You normally have this on?
I think so, yeah. Put that on and see. I think the thing is normally it's not light outside because now we have hit, daylight saving time. Um, let's say turn it back off. Let's see. I think I like that too, like less yellow. We'll probably have to change it if it gets dark, but okay. Hi everybody. Hi Sierra, Jasmina, Sincere Prophetic, Angela. Hi Angela. Angela was actually one of the very first winners when we started doing the giveaways during these lives. All right, let me see. Chulaquan. Did I get that right? Chulaquan. All right, Unity, Johnny Smith. Hi, everybody. Okay, you guys, thanks for the warm welcome. All right, so today we are talking about what happened to you. I have no co-host today, but my typical co-hosts, Rachel and Dosey, are in the room. They just didn't read the book, but they are here with me. So if you see me looking off, chit-chatting, I'm talking to them. Let me turn this brightness down a little bit on this ring light. There we go. I think I was a little too bright. Okay, so I'm so excited to talk about this book. I just finished it today. And, I took my time. I started this one right away because I remember somebody in the chat was telling us last time, like it was a long book. I was like, okay, well, let me get started. But I did the audiobook for this one. And I did transfer my notes to a digital book, an ebook. But if you didn't do the audiobook on this one, I think you actually missed out because this book actually reads like a podcast. Someone told me that and I didn't know what that meant. But quite literally, even in the book itself, it's written like dialogue. So it's like Oprah says, Dr. Perry says. So it very much is like the book itself is really like a transcript of a podcast. If you read it, I'm curious if you agree with that. But I thought this was one of the few times where the audiobook for a psychology book, actually, I think that was the best way to read the book. Now, the thing you miss out on if you do the audiobook is you don't see the diagrams and things. So I did pair it together, but I predominantly listened to this book and I absolutely loved it. Okay, let's see. I'm listening on audiobook. Great so far. Hi, Steph. Been looking forward to today. I've been looking forward to it too. The audiobook was really good and has a lot more content. Yes, that was another great thing. Thanks for that reminder, Charsai. I'm probably saying y'all names wrong. If your name's wrong, if I am, I'm so sorry. My last name is Anya, so folks get that wrong. So I'm with you, okay? So I think that was one of the cool things about the audiobook as well, is that you could actually hear excerpts from Oprah's show when she references different interviews that she did. Because as you know, Oprah, a lot of her career has been focused on processing and talking about trauma. And it's from so many different facets. Now, I was never like a big fan of the Oprah Winfrey show. I feel like it was a little bit past my time. By the time I was coming up, it was like your mom is probably really into that show. It wasn't really me. And my mom wasn't one of the ones. It was like my friends' moms who were really into Oprah show. So I'm not. Oh yeah, and my husband's mom, my mother-in-law, she used to record every single episode. Okay. And so I am definitely surrounded by some people who loved Oprah, but that's not why I chose this book. So I kind of went in with my hesitations because I was kind of like, what can Oprah really add to the conversation around trauma? But I will say, I thought that the clinical commentary that Bruce Perry brought to the conversation with the anecdotes that Oprah brought to the conversation and the anecdotes that he brought from his clinical work, it made for a very, very engaging story. And I love the mixed media having those actual interviews that Oprah did as a part of the story. So let's jump in talking about the book itself. I know some of you guys don't actually, read the book before you come to the meeting. Some of y'all come to the meeting to see if you want to read the book, and I'm all about that because I hate wasting my time on books that I'm not gonna like. When somebody could have told me it was trash from the beginning, but this, my friends, it was a 5-star rating, so I do not think this was a trash book. All right, so let's. Oh yeah.
What are you doing?
Will I be doing a giveaway? I'll give away this book,
Okay.
but I'm not really sure on what the next book is. One book I was thinking about doing was Good Morning Monster. Some of you guys might be familiar with that. If you're not, definitely look it up during the course of this live. Let me know if you would be interested in that. But you guys know I was really looking for? I was looking for a book that's about sex. I was thinking that's something we haven't really read in this group, and I think is very relevant to anyone who's either interested in being a marriage and family therapist, or if you're looking for help in a relationship, or if you're just trying to prepare for your next relationship. I thought a book about sex, but specifically something written by an expert in sex, I thought would be very helpful. So if you guys have recommendations for that, put it in the chat. But okay, so let's look. I'm going to start looking at, I got my Kindle Fire here. This is like a new baby. It's kind of dark, but I'm absolutely obsessed with this thing. And I'm going to go through here and look at all my highlights and just kind of read through. Rachel, if you see anything in the chat that I should address, let me know. All of your comments are important to me. I just like to always make sure that I'm also going through. The peacock. Hi, Kayla. Last time, our friend Kayla, we were with her like a week ago bowling, and she was saying she was in a live, and she's like, I commented, but I don't think you guys knew who I was. So Rachel called out, hi Kayla, so happy to have you here, and thank you for the compliment on my skin. I'm having a good skin week. I'm not gonna lie, because last week and the week before,
it's okay.
It was a struggle, so I really appreciate that, and the camera's helping, I'm sure. Okay, so let's see. Let's talk about just very beginning, the introduction of this book. The very first thing that I highlighted in this book is why it is named What Happened to You. So what they talk about and emphasize, and in some cases I feel like Oprah overemphasizes, is that we as a society tend to focus on what's wrong with you. So people do things and we're looking at them like something is wrong with you. I'm just like, this bothers me to start into my soul. And we don't have enough conversations around what happened to you. What led you to making these choices or being this type of person? Or what happened to me to experience and interpret you this way? So I really loved that they explained why they named it that. And I love the name of the book. I love that it's just a question that makes you want to answer it for yourself, because I was very self-reflective as I was reading through this book. And I thought that was just the question that kept coming back to, what happened to you? What happened to you? And it made a lot of sense why they named it that. So moving on to chapter 2, my main highlight that I had here was about an anecdote that Dr. Perry shared. He shared about how children build their expectations of other people around the experiences that they have with the adults that they're primarily in their life. Now, this is something that we're all really familiar with, right? We all talk about attachment. Like, of course, we know that how your parents treat you is going to affect how you see the world. But he showed an example that I thought really illustrated just how deeply that goes. He talks about a little girl who was playing at the airport in the terminal with her parents, who seemed to be very engaged. You could tell this girl was very loved, and she had an expectation that all people are nice. And there was a mean guy at the airport who was upset about the flight being delayed, and he had an attitude. He was yelling and arguing with the ladies, the flight attendants, and people that are, they're like, we can't control the weather. And so this little girl goes up to this man and starts playing with him. And Dr. Perry actually refers to him as a jerk. He was like, he's being mean. He pushed her away and things. And because this little girl had the expectation that people are nice and kind, she didn't give up on him. She continued trying to play with him. And Dr. Perry, he was like, I'm sitting there watching that. And I'm like, oh, this is the moment where this girl realizes that people are not nice, And he said he was pleasantly surprised, because what ended up happening is for the next few hours while they're waiting on this plane, this guy is on his knees crawling around with the little girl, playing with her. And so instead of the little girl learning that day that, you know, people are mean, she actually brought him into her world, and he wanted to live up to the expectations she had that people are good because she didn't give up on him. Now, this is not a lesson in staying in toxic situations, but I just thought that was so telling about the fact that the way we view people and what we expect of people is so shaped by what we experience in our primary households, you know, the family members we engage with the most. If we're used to being ignored, we will come to expect that we will be ignored. If we're used to being yelled at, we will come to expect that is how people engage with one another. If we're used to being praised and loved, you know, there's even bad things about that, right? If you can't accept criticism and things like that. So, you know, you don't want any form of an extreme. But I thought that was a really beautiful way to introduce the concept of what happened to you and how sometimes it's something totally positive that you're able to bring to the world to help change people's narrative and understanding of working with other people. Let me take a look at what some of you guys are saying. Come as you are. Yes, I know. Thank you guys so much for the skin compliments. For books, have you considered The Love, Execution, or Other Tales of Psychotherapy by Irvin D. Yalom? Not about sex and relationships, but love your take. I haven't checked that out, but I will definitely look at it on Goodreads and add it to see if it's something that would be good for the group. Thank you for that recommendation. Okay, so I was just really curious. What do you guys think about that? Do you feel that it is possible to, I thought that was like a very extreme example of a person who has been so jaded and clearly so angry in life, seeing that little girl bring a positive side out of him. Have you all seen that? You know, do you feel like that's a fairy tale? Honestly, do you believe it is possible for a person who's that developed in their jadedness to be transformed by a person who is more optimistic or has higher expectations of people? Or do you think that's a fairy tale? Okay, so put your answers to that in the chat, and I'll be moving on to chapter 3. I'm trying to stay organized, y'all, because I feel like at the end of every live, I'm always like, oh man, I had so many things I wanted to talk about.
Someone said, that is me. I am still jaded and hard to come out of it. And so Peacock said, light overcomes darkness.
Yeah.
And then,
oh, Come As You Are. Yes, I saw that book. That I was looking at it today. I tend to only recommend books in this group that are over 4 stars, and I think that one it just has few ratings, so I will look at that. But Sienna, I really appreciate the vulnerability and honesty there, saying that you're still jaded and it's hard to come out of it. I feel like that's already step number 1. A lot of times people refuse to acknowledge or accept the fact that they are in a space of being bitter and jaded, even though those emotions would make absolute sense with what you've been through. But once you come to the point where you're ready to make that choice to open up again and be vulnerable, you have to do that with full commitment. So right now, if you're in that place of jadedness, I hope, you know, maybe if you're seeking therapy or anything like that, it might be just a good place to process what happened to you and to think about how you can change that narrative and come out as the victor instead of the victim of your story. Because, you know, things happen to us. We do experience being victims. And sometimes we have to make a choice to kind of become the hero of our own story and like save ourselves. I would go into a lot deeper with that, but my main recommendation is if you are still in that place, definitely seeking professional help or just finding someone to really talk and process that with without feeling like you're trauma dumping or burdening someone. I would highly recommend that. Let's see, my fiance is like that, jaded and bitter about life overall. Whereas here's me, I'm very positive, and his real childlike innocence. You know, in romance books, that's a trope. They call it the sunshine grumpy trope. And it's so interesting. I always hate those books because I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're just this nice person. Like, why are you with this person who's just so mean and rude? But I thought that this was a great example with the little girl at the airport of why. It's like, if you already have this expectation that things are going to work out, and you know that you have the capacity to hold somebody's bitterness, jadedness, to help them work through it, like what a gift to be able to work with somebody and be willing to take on those stressors for someone. But just make sure you're not compromising your own boundaries and standards to do that, you know, because otherwise they're just bringing you down with them. So I love that. If your fiance is like that, but you bring out the positive side and you feel strong enough to be able to do that for him, I think he's really lucky to have you, or they're really lucky to have you. I feel like I'm a girl to an extent. I always try and bring out the light in someone. Joy just feels better. Now, this is from Kayla. I can say that for sure. She's the person, if she's going to make you laugh, she's going to, you know, like,
Even if she's going through.
Even if she's going through. The thing about Kayla, you do not know that. So, Kayla, I can definitely validate that you are that person. I think you are a joy giver. You create joy in situations that could be disastrous. This is, what are you doing? Where are you coming from?
Upstairs.
This isn't Dusty for anybody who's late to the chat. My little boo boo.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Anybody who doesn't know him. And I realized before I got on here, I have on the same shirt I was wearing in my last video.
Y'all don't love Aunt Juliet?
Yeah, Aunt Juliet. Let me tell y'all, if you haven't seen that show, it's in New York. Absolutely obsessed. So double the promotion for them. But yeah, I was like, I don't care. I'm not changing. I'm comfortable.
Do you?
Let me know when you need help with that. I'm gonna call.
Okay, do you want to just bring it down here with some headphones? Oh, right, because I'm using the laptop. Okay. And Dusty's working on a short film that's coming out this Friday, so he can't be down here with us, but I got Rachel. I got everything I need.
Yay! Oh.
Okay, so let's see. Chapter 4, called The Spectrum of Trauma. Now, this was a chapter that I took quite a few notes in. And I'll just read the statistic. It says, a recent study by the National Survey of Children's Health found that almost 50% of the children in the United States have had at least one significant traumatic experience. Even more recently, a study from 2019 by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that 60% of American adults report having had at least one adverse childhood experience. So that's an ACE score. If you're a therapist, you're familiar with the ACE score. And almost a quarter reported 3 or more ACEs. So basically, that lets you know that we are in a nation that is very trauma populated. Like, there are so many. I mean, we just had a traumatic event happen today. Anybody who's watching the news today is experiencing probably some level of even secondhand trauma, just with the fear of sending your own children to school and things like that. I won't go too deeply into that, but just saying that we are in a nation that, you know, perpetuates a lot of trauma. And so I thought that, you know, that was not surprising to me. And I do have people who ask me sometimes, like, do I think that the word trauma is overused? And even with that statistic, I still think it is. And the only reason that I say that, it's not to gatekeep. Somebody said, you're trying to gatekeep trauma. I'm not trying to gatekeep. What I'm trying to make sure is that we know the difference between experiencing a trauma and being traumatized. Because a lot of us are going to experience either relationally traumatic events. It could be a car accident, a natural disaster. Trauma, unfortunately, and suffering is a part of living. But what happens a lot of times is that some of us are able to successfully navigate and work through those things in a way where they're not affecting us on a daily basis or on a regular basis. We're not having flashbacks. We're not having nightmares. We're not using a lot of avoidance tactics. Can't drive to certain places, for example. Those are things where we talk about traumatization, being in the state of your trauma impacting your regular life. And that's the distinction I want to make, because I'm very aware of the fact that all of us have probably experienced at least one trauma in our lifetime, probably something major. But the question is, how much does that trauma affect you today? And, you know, it's going to be a part of our narrative. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of our story. But is it something that's holding you back in life to this day? So that's the distinction I like to make, because I see sometimes people are purposefully harmful to others, for example, and they use the experience of trauma as an excuse. And, you know, even though it might be a reason that contributes to why we make certain choices, we can't let it stop there. We have to be willing to work through those things that are impacting us so that we are not continuing to perpetuate the trauma to other people in our lives. So that is a question that, again, I thought this would be a good time to kind of answer that question. Okay. All right. So let's see. Next note within chapter 4. And this is what Dr. Perry talks about. He gives the example of, there is I think he said like a a classroom catches on fire or something like that at school. If somebody remembers the exact example, please put it in the chat. But there is some sort of experience where a person is like, like a kid is at school and there's a fire. There's 3 people that he gives the example. He's like, you got a first grader who was a part of that classroom, a 5th grader who maybe was on that hallway, and you have the firefighter who put the fire out. For the first grader, that can be a traumatizing experience, right? Because and that first grader may have never seen a big fire before. Maybe that was a space that represented safety for them. And now they're seeing this place that were like their home away from home in flames. Traumatizing. The 5th grader might feel like really discombobulated and unsure about what's going on. They get some answers. They return back to their classroom, which is still intact, and they learn that things can happen in another area that doesn't necessarily affect their daily life, right? So it's a trauma they experience, but it's not necessarily traumatizing. And for the firefighter, you know, who just came from a much more severe fire and is putting out this little classroom fire, this is just another part of his day, right? 3 people experiencing the same event, only one of them walking away traumatized. And that's how he explained how trauma works. He said, for example, that people during the pandemic, they were like, the entire nation is traumatized from this. And he said that he was not comfortable with that because you had some people who were actually thriving during the pandemic, some people who didn't know a single person who got sick, some people who lost multiple significant people in their lives, some people who were sick themselves and their lives were on the line. And so it's one of those things where just because everybody's experiencing the same thing does not mean they're experiencing it the same way. And so that experience of, or that distinction between being trauma, you know, experiencing trauma, witnessing trauma, or being traumatized, I thought was really important. He says for the first grader, yes, but not for the 5th grader. The 5th grader had an acute stress reaction and within weeks returned to his baseline. And for the firefighter, as we said, it was just a resilience building experience. Isn't that interesting?
Very. Someone in the comments said, in my case, being a pushover / passive when I was younger and being taken advantage of has made me very guarded and cynical, hoping through self-work I can change this. Especially since my partner is such a positive person, I want him to have the same peace he brings to my life.
I first of all love that you have the hope of providing a person with a peaceful environment. I would be surprised if your partner didn't already find a sense of peace in you since they are with you. And I think that your awareness of the fact that your trauma is impacting the way that you're able to be vulnerable and open says a lot about the work that you're already doing. That realization in and of itself means that you have an understanding of what happened to you. And so again, you know, hopefully that you have the resources to get, you know, some professional help, or you have a solid support system. And we'll get to that when I say professional help or a solid support system. And I one there's a few more things in here, but we're going to get to it later. My mind's all over the place because the book had so many gems, and I'm like so nervous about not being able to get through to everything. Oh no, and my Kindle Fire is about to die. I have an Android charger in that drawer. You know where I keep like that lamp that you can touch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Android charger in there that will charge this. Okay, thank you so much. Oh, actually, it's the same kind of charger you use for your phone. You know what I mean? The new, like the new Android charger that you have for your phone.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Oh, does it have a block?
I don't see the block.
There should be one in there. Okay. Sorry, you guys. All right. So, and I'm still in chapter 4. The 3 E's definition of trauma, which articulates what we just talked about: the event, the experience, and the effects. So that's what we have to think about when we're questioning if a person is in a currently traumatized state: the event, the experience, and the effects. And then the last thing I want to talk about from this chapter is how they talk about the dilemma of defining trauma. Yeah, I think it should fit in there. Does it not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, we can just put it over here and I'll move this over here. Thank you so much. What would I do if you didn't come? Let's see. Maybe I'll do like this.
Yeah, let's see. Still
Not quite reaching.
Maybe we haven't. Do you have an?
Oh, you know what? The stuff. Plug
Oh,
it
yeah,
into the
computer.
laptop. Then again, you know these.
It might hit the
Oh, that's
adapter,
right.
yeah.
Thank you, Endosi. I don't know why Apple computers don't want to have regular
Don't get me started.
adapters. Like, so annoying. Or the fact that like on iPhones you can't even put an aux cord in there anymore.
Mhm.
So that's why it was black. Because I was like, why is it black like that? Fire is connected to low power charger. If you leave it connected, okay, whatever. Anyway, so another question is about like how do you define trauma? And they say in this book, one thing I loved about this book is like one of the reasons that when I first started out as a therapist, if somebody said they were looking to process trauma, I actually didn't want to work with them. Yes, Rachel is such a great partner. I didn't want to work with them because I was so intimidated by the concept of trauma. And what I loved about this book is that Dr. Perry, who has been working with trauma for over 30 years, also talked about the fact that trauma is not easily defined. And he says the dilemma of defining trauma is not completely solved, and that leads to confusing continued use of the term. And I really appreciated that because I feel like that was the main thing is like, I feel like I'm constantly getting into a conversation with myself of, is this traumatic? Is that not, is that trauma? So the fact that he could validate that there's not clarity around what defines trauma, I really appreciated that. And I feel like that was all I need to know is that you could write a whole book about trauma and still at the end of the day say, and we're still not clear on what defines trauma. And I thought that was a very humbling statement for them to make in a book where people might expect them to have all of the answers. Okay, chapter 5, connecting the dots. Oh my gosh, I loved this section. This is about the generational transmission of fear. And I actually posed this question in our Goodreads book club. And hopefully we got this in the description box. I think we have this in the description box because everybody always asks, how can I join the book club on Goodreads? I think I have it in the description box. But this was such an interesting conversation. Oprah asks, she said, can trauma be inherited? I want to know what y'all's answer is to that in the chat first. Can trauma be inherited? If you read the book, you can still put it in there. It doesn't matter. But I'm just very curious what you guys think. This is what Dr. Perry said about that. He said, when you ask that question, it can be interpreted more than one way. The way that people are usually asking about it is whether or not, oh, look at everybody. Y'all, I wasn't sure if y'all were here. Okay, I see everybody in the chat.
Like, I'm dealing with that now.
So what they said is that when we ask about if trauma is inherited, what we're asking is if there's a genetic component to that. Like, can it be literally passed down in our DNA? And again, he was like, that's inconclusive. That is something we just do not have the answers to. He said, but if you change the question just a little bit, can trauma be transmitted from generation to generation? The answer is absolutely yes. Why? Because when our ancestors experience certain things as fears, we learn, even subconsciously through them, to fear these certain things. They gave the example of dogs, which resonated with me because I am very scared of dogs. Yet people ask me, have you ever had a bad experience with the dog? And my answer is no, literally never once. I've never had a bad experience with the dog. I don't even think I've ever really had a dog really chase me. And if they did, it was usually because they wanted to play or something. But still, I'm talking about the smallest dog. I'm terrified. And he said that, give the example of dogs. And you know what's so interesting in this section? They referred to Tyler Perry as an expert of colonization or something. I was like, okay. I didn't know about that, but he was like a leading expert in colonization. I was like, okay. like 2021. So it was surprising. But I thought, hello, Family Originals. But so they talk about, he said, Tyler Perry said that, but it was good. It was good when he said, I just was surprised. Tyler Perry said that the use of dogs was one of the most effective mechanisms for policing Black bodies with slavery. So that's one of the, I know, yeah. So that's one of the ways that they were able to police slaves, is by making them fearful of dogs who were literally trained to hurt them should they step out of line. And so then he says, so then you move up a couple of generations, and the same tactics are being used during the civil rights movement, for example. So now you've got multiple generations who've experienced the fear of dogs, right? Then you move on to like a person like me who has not experienced any of those things, yet you walk down the street with them. And this I can definitely say happened to me. You walk down the street with your parent, they see a dog, they slightly tighten your hand. They kind of push you to the side. Your parents not going up, oh, can I pet this dog? You can tell they're scared. They're not even saying anything, right? Sometimes they might more explicitly by, oh, watch out for that dog, but they might not even say anything. But you learn from a young age that these beings are dangerous, right? And so that was a perfect example of how generationally we can transmit fears. And, that goes, it's not just a racial thing either, just based on your family experiences. For example, if you have a family of immigrants, and let me turn this off because I know Rachel's cold. Alexa, turn off thermostat. It's off. Sorry to anybody else who has one. I'm sure yours just went off hearing me say that. I'm so sorry. But I cannot have my boo-boo in here just freezing her butt off. Y'all got to see her. She got the hat on and she's like shaking. The thing about her, she's always cold. I'm always hot. Yeah. But so, basically, if you had a family, for example, who was always constantly afraid of being deported, right? Police don't represent safety for your family, right? So whereas somebody else might walk into a neighborhood, see a police car there and feel reassured and safe, like, okay, the cops are here, that might be more alarm or a cause for alarm for someone else who maybe they never had any direct experience with the police, but this was a fear that was transmitted down through from generation to generation. It was like, that was one of the sections of the book where I was like, wow, because that example directly related to me. And still to this day, knowing that I'm still kind of scared of dogs, and I've been working on that because I was like, Steph, you really can't have clients that you're telling them to face their fears when you can't face a little puppy. So I've been really working on that, and I've been getting better. But that's just to say, like I always tell y'all, I am not perfect. I'm reading these books for myself as much as I'm reading for my clients and for you guys. So
perfectly imperfect.
Thank you. Perfectly imperfect. That is definitely me. I try to focus on building and working on myself. And that's part of what brought me into therapy, is the belief that a person can change and can grow. But that is for all of y'all who put yes in the chat. So he's like, yes or no. Dr. Perry pretty much never gives you like a straight answer when Oprah was asking these questions. And I loved it. I can always hold space for two truths. And I thought that he did a beautiful job illustrating how something can be both true and false.
If you wanted to read some people are commenting, their trauma or trauma that's been passed down.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, that epilogue gutted me. I know. Late to the live. That's okay, Guadalupe. You're still here in good time. Yes and no. I won't have my mother's trauma, but I've been affected by my mother's trauma because it changed her. Exactly. I used to be scared of dogs. Yes, and the nurture aspect can feel so strong. Absolutely. And there is some question about whether or not there is a genetic or DNA component, but he just said that has not really been proven where he can just say an absolute yes, like he can say with the transmitted trauma. My mom's claustrophobic because she saw her mother freak out when she got stuck in a bathroom when she was younger. Yes, my mom was actually really afraid of elevators. And it was crazy, y'all, because she was an air traffic controller. So she would literally, if you're a traffic controller, you work at the very top of the tower. Like they literally refer to it as the tower. And she was walking up all those flights of stairs every day to get to work. Yeah. Because I don't know if she was a kid or her dad got stuck in an elevator. So you can see, I mean, luckily that I wasn't scared because my dad was also a pilot. So it was like, I was either going to go either way on that. But yeah. Oh, sorry, Tiffany. I'm so sorry. I talked to your, I'll try not to say that too much in the live. I should have muted myself, but I don't know how to, y'all. I'm so worried about getting kicked out of these lives. Like, I don't know what YouTube does on these lives, but let's see. I'm terrified of dogs. Growing up, my neighbor's dogs killed her own 4-month-old baby. I remember being scared to walk past her house. Yeah, that is just traumatizing. Just to even hear that story is traumatizing. I'm scared of aggressive dogs, absolutely, but love me a miniature toy dog. I'm getting there because even if they're miniature, if they're really hyper and energetic, that still scares me. I realized that trauma as well. My dad was in ICE custody when I was in first grade, and when SB4 passed, that heightened my anxiety. Yep. Yeah, you should ask your mom why she's scared of escalators. She might have a reason that could help you understand some of your own experiences. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Something else that came up earlier in the book, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I forgot to highlight it. But I thought this was super interesting, you guys. So they start talking about, and for therapists, I thought this was super useful, the concept of microdosing when it comes to trauma. And they said that Dr. Prey said the typical model of therapy right now, talk therapy, and I've seen The Body Keeps the Score, he talks about this as well. I've seen, where someone says they've experienced trauma and the therapist's goal, I've been this therapist in the past, is to get them to like share the whole story of their trauma. And it's like, that is going to be the moment that you release it just because you shared this story. And they're basically like, no, that's really not how it works, because when you do it that way, essentially, you are taking the power from your client to talk about trauma at a time and at a pace that makes them feel comfortable. So he referred to it as kind of like dosing the trauma. And so like he talked about working with children, for example, who had experienced some sort of super traumatizing event. And what he would do is like, he would try to play with the kid for 5 minutes, walk out for 10 minutes, come back, talk to mom for 5 minutes, walk out for 10 minutes. And he's basically making it so that the child can see you're going to leave and keep coming back. And also that the engaging with them is not going to be something that's going to be re-traumatizing them. Oprah even shared one of the people that she interviewed where this girl had experienced some major trauma, and her parents said they had never gotten the full story from her and they weren't going to ask her to tell them. And Oprah said at the time, she was thinking like, really? And I can see why she would think that. Like, why it seems almost like you're shielding yourself from having to deal with her suffering when you should be partnering with her on that. But in actuality, what they were doing was helpful because she'd already had to retell the story to the officers, to all these people that were involved, and they didn't want her to feel also like they have to hear the full story from her. Like, they heard enough and they just want to support her, and she can come to them when they wanted to. And I thought that was like super mature, because as parents, you start feeling so insecure about your part and how your child was put in this place that you're more focused on getting answers and almost like alleviating yourself of guilt, that you're not focused on like how to best support that kid in that moment.
That's an emotionally mature parent.
Yes.
Going back to the last book.
Yes. Emotionally immature parents, with Rachel saying that is an emotionally mature parent. Absolutely. Because they are not getting access to information that I'm sure they're very, very interested and curious about. So that was, Elizabeth Smart's parents. Yeah, Guadalupe. Oh, okay, so you read the book too. I'm curious, for everybody who did read the book, I'd love to know your rating out of 5 stars. Like I said, for me, it was 5 stars. It was almost only 4.5 though, because I'm not gonna lie, some of Oprah's contributions, I was just kind of like, I was like, are you really adding to the conversation? Like, I don't know. Like, at one point she started quoting a scripture, and then she was like, at the end, she was like sharing about, how she forgave her mom before her mom died, but she never really shared about how her mom traumatized her. So, and there was never any conversations about how forgiveness was an important element of working through trauma. So I was kind of like, it was like,
that's because she typically focuses on other people's trauma and never really opens up about hers. But she has so many interviews about
yes,
it. I still like her, but I can also see her shortcomings.
I felt like they were kind of trying too hard to like give it a happy ending. I'm like, what psychology book has like an epilogue? It literally said epilogue. I was like, and I thought Dr. Perry, he updated us on like a kid. He talked about from chapter 3 and where he's at in life now through and what helped him get there. That was an awesome way to end the book. But then it had to come on with Oprah's epilogue about that. I was like, I don't know if that was like really good for this book, but it was almost a 4.5. But y'all let me know your ratings. You know, if you are, 3, 4, 5 star if you read the book. Okay, so I don't know if I guess I didn't. Okay, so one thing Oprah said that really stood out to me is as they were talking about the trauma dosing process, she said she admitted that she has never been to a therapist. She said, I've actually never been to therapy. And you know what else she said?
What?
She said that Gail is her therapist. Now, I thought that was really interesting. The reason why is because I feel like a lot of people don't go into therapy because they don't have the resources. It's like, okay, yeah, I could pay for therapy or I could pay my bills. And so for Oprah, a person who is doing a lot of work with trauma, a person who has admitted a lot about the very traumatic upbringing that she has, and who definitely has the means and has funded organizations to provide mental health support to other people. I just thought the fact that she's never ever been to one therapy session, I thought that was super interesting. She said that Gail is her therapist and she is Gail's therapist. So I want to ask you all, we already had a bit of this conversation in the Goodreads book club, but I want to know, what do y'all think about that? What do you think about the concept of two best friends being therapists to each other? Her argument for that was, well, maybe that has worked for me now hearing you say that because we were able to just dose our trauma. So, that was one argument for it. And I'm curious, do you guys think that that's a good idea or not? Like, if you have the means, do you think you should try therapy? Or do you think that if you already have a person that you can process your trauma and stuff with, like, what's the point of reaching out to somebody else? I would love to know what y'all think.
Also, you have some people in here that's rated it. Guadalupe rated it 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
And said that Oprah's experience, or they liked Oprah's experience and what she said about her own stories.
Yes.
And then Laura, so far, she says a 5 out of 5, but she has 3 more chapters left.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I agree with you, Guadalupe, about Oprah's stories, making it so that I can relate, especially the interviews that she was sharing from the show. And that's why this book is still a 5-star for me. Like, if I were to separate it, let's say if it was 2 different books, like Dr. Perry's book and Oprah's book, I would probably give his contribution 5 stars only because the therapist in me learned so much about trauma from his 30 years worth of experience. But I do love how Oprah personalized it. But I thought he also brought some great anecdotes in that could stand on their own and share the story. I felt like a lot of times Oprah was just leaning into and that's what happened to you. Like she said that like every 5 minutes. And then I just also felt like that epilogue, that was like, and that was what I left the book on. I was like, I was so sure this was a 5-star until that. So I was like Dr. Perry's contribution, like 6 stars. And then Oprah's contribution, like 3.5 stars, but altogether 5. So that was just my perspective.
A lot of people are saying, and you can read some of them, that having your friend be kind of like your therapist is good, but it still doesn't compare to professional opinion.
Oh, I love what Laura Benita said. When I tell you my jaw dropped when Oprah said that she had never been to therapy, but to each their own. Yes, me too, Laura. Like I literally stopped the book right there and immediately wrote in the Goodreads community, like the discussion tab. I'm like, what do y'all think about this? Let's see. I definitely think friends can have an extremely therapeutic healing effect, but they are also not qualified in the same way licensed therapists are to actually treat trauma. I agree with that. I mean, Rachel and I, let me tell y'all, we'll be on the phone till, I'm not joking, 3 a.m. on a
Still not tired
still
talking.
on a work night, just processing the stuff that we're dealing with, you know. So I know there's a lot of value in being able to talk to someone who actually fully understands your history, and it's not as exhausting. Sometimes I have to bring them up to speed and update them because they already know everything. But at the same time, I know that we both would benefit sometimes to be able to rewrite our stories, because the narrative is already pre-written between the two of us sometimes, because we've known each other for our whole entire lives. Rachel and I are only 3 weeks apart, y'all. Like, I don't know how I survived 3 whole weeks on this planet without her, but you know, somehow I made it. And ever since then, I haven't had to worry about it.
God blessed you with me and you with me.
That was the best gift for my almost 1 month birthday. Let's see. Adriana said, I think it's healthy to vent to your friends to some point, but nothing compares to a professional. Kayla said, oh no, honey. She said, Oprah has a lot of trauma. I know. Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, I'm just going to skip around a little bit. Because what the heck? It's 7:51. I thought I was doing so good on time.
You're doing good.
Thanks.
You're doing good.
Okay, well, I'm just going to skip to all the stuff I really, really want to talk about too. Oprah gives this example, you guys. My heart was breaking on this example. She said she was on the set of some movie she was in, and she was playing a mother. And so the director told her, okay, and on this shot, you're going to tuck your daughter in. So he starts the shot, and then Oprah starts, like, you know, going around the bed, tucking in the corners of the bed. And he was like, no, I need you to tuck her in. All right, take 2. She starts doing, I know. And she starts doing the same thing. Y'all, when we're laughing, we're not laughing at it. It's just Rachel and I, it's a bad thing. Like, when stories are really sad and stuff, for some reason, like together, when we're apart, it's not a problem. I'm not doing this in therapy, but we're together. We have a bad habit of laughing when things are really sad. I know, like, just keep from crying. We just start laughing. So please don't take that as we're like insensitive too, because this story actually really resonated with me. So he says, all right, tuck her in. And she starts tucking in the corners of the bed. He's like, what are you doing? He was like, what are you doing? Like, you have to like tuck her in. And Oprah, oh my God, the way she was saying it, like Rachel, it was the saddest thing ever. Even in the audio recording, you can still hear the sadness in her voice, because she said at some point she started realizing, like, oh no, this is about to be like an embarrassing thing for me. And he said, you're supposed to be tucking your daughter in. And she had to say to him, like, I don't know what that means.
Wow, the fact that she had the bravery to actually tell him.
She was like, I think she whispered it or something like that. Like, she was really embarrassed. And so she said they both looked at each other for a minute and realized what that meant. And he said, it's okay. I'll teach you how to do it. Isn't that like the saddest thing? Oh my gosh. So it's like, Oprah has experienced so much. The fact that she never, you know, never even tried therapy, I think is so interesting, just because she clearly is like really close friends with this psychiatrist that helped her write this book. She has her their 30-year relationship and stuff. And so I thought that was super interesting.
So maybe, speaking of that, maybe that's how she hasn't had therapy, because she has professionals. Like, there's so many rich people around her, and I'm sure they're professionals in their own field. And maybe she has friends like that. So they're kind of like her therapist / friend, like a real life therapist and friend, and maybe she gets it from there along with Gail, and that's why she hasn't gone.
Yeah, maybe, but it seemed like a fear thing to me. Just hearing that was so surprising. I was like, I feel like there's something deeper to that, just never having gone. I just think that there is something deeper to that. So let's see. When I tell you my daughter, Sierra said, go ahead, Adriana, the peacock. Sandy, there is a difference between venting and having a friend to commiserate with you and having a therapist walk you through the why you do what you do.
Girl,
I think so too. Like, I'm never going to be as effective in my conversation with Rachel as my best friend as I am with my clients, because with my clients, there's a very clear roadmap and connection between what's happened in the past happening now. Whereas with Rachel, we know so much about each other's experiences. It's like convoluted, it's crowded, the memories, the stories. I know what her primary core stories are because we've talked about everything, and then a lot of the stuff I'm a part of, so I have my own memories of it, right? The things that stuck out to me. So I agree with that completely. You know, you can vent with a friend, you can process with a friend, but I think it takes a therapist sometimes, like, that has no stake in it whatsoever, completely objective, like, your story is not a part of my story, to help you see through the actions and behaviors that you're doing and like how they are impacted by things you've experienced in the past. Let's see. I need a professional badly. If I could find telehealth with my med insurance, I just can't afford childcare for my 3 small children while also driving to a therapist. Yes. Now, most of the insurance providers are definitely, even Medicaid, Medicare, are allowing virtual sessions. That's been the case really since the pandemic. It wasn't the case before then, and it seems like it's going to probably be a staple. There's been some conversation every few months about not allowing it to be a staple anymore, but I think that the argument for how effective it is has made it where like the research has shown it's still just as effective. So you should be able to find virtual services. Usually on the back of your insurance card, there's a number that's going to say the mental health number. You give them a call. They can direct you to people who are in network or agencies that they are partnered with that, have worked out some sort of deal. Also, another thing to think about, depending on what company you guys work for, EAP, the Employee Assistance Programs, sometimes will pay for a certain number of sessions for you. So if you're not really comfortable like making that commitment to paying for therapy, a lot of times you might get like 5 or 6 sessions free through your company. So definitely look into all those resources if you really are wanting to find a therapist, but you just don't know how to get started. And also, a lot of people ask me like, how can I find a therapist to get started with my search? I always recommend psychologytoday.com because that's a great way to narrow it down based on insurance, based on demographics. So if you have a certain gender preference, if you're looking for maybe a queer therapist, if you're looking for someone who's a certain race, you can really narrow it down. So that way you can have someone that you don't have as many obstacles in the way of like processing your own experiences. Like you don't have to educate them too much on what you've been through. So I definitely recommend psychologytoday.com if you're looking for that. And if you're looking specifically for a marriage and family therapist, is aamft.org. And you can go to find a therapist on the website. Okay, so let's see. Didn't read it yet. I personally love the epilogue. Maybe I just like happy endings. I ended up in tears. I'm curious, Guadalupe, did you do the audiobook as well, or did you read it? Because like on the audiobook, it was just, I loved the epilogue I love Dr. Perry's part, and I love the story Oprah was sharing. I just didn't know if it was the best way to end this particular book based on what they talked about. I was listening to a podcast and the therapist told the caller that she needed an end date for therapy. Is it possible to be in therapy too long? The caller was using terms and did seem really informed. Okay. It depends. It depends on the style of therapy that the therapist is using and what the client is hoping to get out of therapy. So I have clients that I've been seeing for years, and whenever it's time for us to, it's okay. Sure. If anybody does not have this book and you want it, and I will reach out to you. You can tell me if you want an audiobook or ebook or paperback, whatever. And you don't have this book and you would like it, start putting your Instagram handles in the chat. And Adosi's going to be starting to put that in a raffle so that I can pick a winner. We like to do a giveaway every live if we can. And so I'll be giving away this book. I would be giving away the next book, but I'm just not sure what it is next. So I think when it comes to how long you're going to stay in therapy, when I get to updating some of my treatment plans with my clients and I say, what changes would you like to see in your life that would indicate to you that you no longer need to be in therapy? Some of my clients tell me like, hey, once I have a new job, once I feel confident in expressing myself and establishing boundaries, I will be ready to end therapy. And we're able to do that once they get there. But some of my clients are like, I just need a place where I can process like daily, regular stressors because I don't want to overwhelm my friends and family with negative conversations that I could have a space for where I can just bring it to them more in doses and my relationships don't have to suffer in that way. And I am in support of that. So it really depends on what you're looking for with therapy. If you're the kind of person that has a hard time, like let's say doing actions in between sessions and you need someone to hold you more accountable, having an end date might be good. So that way, I only have, like, I've had clients come to me and say, this is what I need to work through before my wedding. So we already have a deadline. Or this is what I need to work through before I move to this state. We already have a deadline. So we have a very structured, regimented process. We know what we're talking about. We know the people that they want to have conversations with. We're getting our talking points together. We're role playing to get those conversations prepared because we know we have an end date. But not all clients are like that. Not all clients benefit from that. But there is a lot of conversation around whether or not therapy should have an end date. I'm more of the like whatever the client needs type of perspective, but it also puts me in a position where I very rarely am able to take on new clients because I've been seeing a lot of the same clients for a long time. They've reached their original goals, but they like to treat therapy kind of like going to the gym, where it's like, okay, just because I have these new muscles doesn't mean I need to continue. I need help to continue working through them and working on them. So it just depends. Okay, let's see. I hope to never stop therapy. I want the book. Thank you. Okay, Tiffany, thank you. Everybody who wants the book, whether it's audiobook, whatever, I will contact you and you tell me, just put your Instagram handles in there. Why Instagram handles? Because we cannot direct message on YouTube. So that is why I get Instagram handles so that I can reach out to you on there. Okay. So let's see, anything else? Okay, so one of the questions you might have if we're doing a book on trauma is like, okay, well, Stephanie, what were the takeaways about how to work through trauma? The main things that I took from this book is that you want to focus on connectivity. So he really emphasized the importance of healthy relationships as a way of working through trauma, as well as what I loved. He talked a lot about rhythm. So he said there is, and I saw this is the same thing in Body Keeps the Score. There is a lot of research that shows that, doing things in sync with other people, whether it be like making music with people, dancing, if you're on a sports team, things like that, and he talked about what I really loved is when they really looked at that through the lens of how the school system functions and how our school system really, people like to use the term trauma informed. I just heard someone say that today and I was kind of like, I just read about that because he was like, hey, we use this blanket term trauma informed, yet we really don't even know what that means. And because of that, people do a 3-hour seminar so they can stamp on their organization, we're a trauma informed organization. But he said, if you look at our actual institutions, we are not working according to what a trauma informed lens would look like. For example, they talk about dissociation and how daydreaming is a coping skill for a person who's dealing with trauma. For example, a moment where they can escape from maybe bad memories or flashbacks that they're having. Now, a flashback is also from a dissociation, so it's not always positive. But they were saying that dissociation in and of itself is not a negative thing. It's a coping mechanism in some ways. But, kids are expected to just sit there, pay attention for like 8 hours straight with no opportunity for creativity, daydreaming, disconnecting, so that they can tap into more introspective versions of themselves and check in with their feelings. Also, kids are a lot of times not allowed to wear earbuds and things like that. I know when I was the kid, and even now, like when I have to do a lot of work, having music going is like a game changer. Like I can go from not feeling motivated at all to like flying through so much work with music. And they like, the rhythmic element of music, the predictability element of music, it can be very helpful for helping a kid be able to concentrate and focus. But we are in a school, our school systems typically do not allow that, for example. And so I really loved how they compared the needs, for working through trauma, navigating trauma versus institutionalized processes that directly counter the research for how to work with it. So, we say we're trauma informed, yet we don't really have procedures in place that support what research is saying, this is how we should be addressing trauma. Let's see. Just want to make sure I don't miss anything else. I just didn't know. Cannot not talk about this. Oh, was there something else you want?
Well, it was a question for you. So finish your thought about the book and
then. Do you get burnt out from absorbing people's trauma problems? I do not, but a lot of therapists do. The reason I do not, I am, a lot of people say I'm an empath. I am not a self-proclaimed empath. I am very able to compartmentalize my experience for another person's experience to the point where, if you're a person that's looking for more of an empath. It could be even experienced as being cold, so I am able to compartmentalize in a way where I can help somebody process what they're going through without taking it on as my own stressor. But I have a lot of friends who are therapists where that is not the case, because they came into the field because they're empaths, and they're finding that's the thing that's actually making it really hard, and they want to like leave the field. So whenever somebody tells me they want to be a therapist, I'm like, well, you just, like, I'm an empath, so I think be a great therapist. I'm like, yes, that could be a wonderful trait to have so your clients feel seen, but just make sure you would still be able to take care of yourself being an empath and doing such difficult work. That's a great question. Guadalupe also said, I remember dissociating a lot as a kid when I wanted to ignore people who didn't make me feel safe. Absolutely. And that's a very effective and great coping mechanism to have. He talked about dissociation as, when your body is at a place where you are not able to escape the danger, like you cannot fight, like maybe you're a little kid, you're not able to fight a big parent. You can't flee because you can't hop in your car and go somewhere or run away without your parents catching you. So then you do like a mental escape. You're doing that freezing thing that, we've added that on fight, flight, or freeze. And you're sitting there like escaping within your mind. That's what dissociation is. And he said it's a coping mechanism so that your body does not have to deal with the stressors that it's being presented with, that it has no actual tangible escape from or protection for. So that was a really good conversation. I know, right? Cute Oprah Winfrey asking about the importance of what happened to you. I know, Sierra, she kept homing in on that. Like she said that every 5 minutes. Let's see. What else, y'all? It's like, I'm so sad that it's already after 8. I had so much I want to talk about. Okay. Let's see. Got to prioritize. Oh, have to talk about this. Oh my gosh. The one thing that really blew my mind, that I was like, this is so good, is when he started talking about the concept of relational poverty. You know what? Let me see if I can find the exact quotes. Our brains, our bodies, our systems. I gotta find what chapter it was. But you guys, it was so good. Basically, if I can remember, since I don't have it right in front of me, basically, when you are in certain clans, like our bodies are designed, he said, like the typical clan formulation, like, I don't know if he was saying centuries before or in different populations, is that for every kid like under 4 years old or something like that, there are 4 older adults or people who are attending to them. Like it might be an older sibling, 2 parents, and like a grandparent, for example. He said, yet in our culture, we expect one person, like a single mother, for example, to be absolutely everything that those 4 people per little kid would be to multiple children. And he said, then we shame that single mother for putting herself in that position and not being able to throw the ball with her kids, find male role models, take care of the meals, work, all of these things. And he talks about this concept of relational poverty and how, like, we don't function as a village in our culture. If you do, it's very, you have to submerge yourself into that. But neighborhoods don't function the way they used to function. Heck, families don't function when they used to function. In a lot of cultures, you have multiple generations in a household for that reason. Grandparents get to a certain age, they're staying at the house with you because they're helping to take care of the kids. Everybody's collecting the resources together. And in our culture, that's looked at as a bad thing. And so that conversation around relational poverty and how disconnection is like one of the biggest proponents of trauma and results or consequences of trauma. So like it both creates trauma and it's a result of trauma, is disconnection. And that's why he talks about the importance of relationships as a way of addressing trauma and working through trauma. I just thought that was so on point, that conversation around relational poverty, because I never thought about it that way. But he said, it was a custom. It was customary in certain cultures. You have 4 adults per every kid that's a certain age. And we're expecting one adult to be able to do all of that for multiple kids. And I'm like, that's so true. It's like an impossible feat to be able to provide all of that to multiple children. Even just to have one adult for one kid is a lot. So I loved that conversation. And it's a phrase that I never thought of, relational poverty, that I've already been bringing up a lot with clients. Y'all, some of the stuff I wanted to talk about was how they talk about like the release of natural opioids when you cut and stuff, when you're dysregulated, but I don't have time to go into that. Okay, I have to talk about this. Okay. This is not long either. But when he talks about, a lot of times people are like, kids are resilient. And he was like, nobody is just born with resilience. Like, resilience is built through experiences. And he says, this is an actual quote, we often use our belief in another person's resilience as an emotional shield. We protect ourselves from the discomfort, confusion, and helplessness we feel in the face of their trauma. It's a kind of looking away. It lets our worldview go unchallenged and lets our life continue with minimal disruption. Isn't that so powerful? And it's so true. So often, we just like to say that a person is strong or they're resilient, so we don't have to face the consequence of this person suffering. Like, we don't really want to deal with that. So we just say they're so strong, and we try to make them feel like we're praising them for being strong, when really what we're doing is removing ourselves from their healing process. We're basically saying it's not even necessary because they're so resilient and they'll just bounce back from it. So that was something that I really want us to all walk out of this thinking about. Like, the next time you say somebody is so strong or they're so resilient, ask yourself, am I saying this because I don't want to do the hard work of helping this person through this traumatic experience? And I think for a lot of people, that is the truth. I know for myself, I can even say that's been the truth, or even acting like I'm so strong and resilient because I don't want to feel pitied or make people feel that they have to help me.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved that quote. In the past, my mind would wonder when I felt uncomfortable situation coming up. It took me a long time to realize it was a form of dissociation. It was a relative something. Forgot the word. Yeah, that made so much sense. Wow, so true. Yeah, the hanger and the Nerf ball analogy just clicked for me. Yeah, it was just, there were so many great analogies in here. So many. I think a lot of these terms like he created, and the way that he phrases things, I thought, I'm going to be referring to some of these things for the rest of my life as I'm working with clients and working on myself. Let's see. And one other thing I wanted to definitely highlight, because I want you guys to walk away with things you can do if you didn't read this book. When you're engaging with a person who has been traumatized, instead of going in with that mentality of they're so strong, resilient, they'll be able to work through it or bounce back. He said, instead of saying, hey, tell me what you're thinking about, you need to let them control when and how much they're going to talk about what's upsetting them. If you give a person that control and help them feel safe in their own time, they will be more capable of talking. So a lot of times in therapy, in relationships, if we're not just leaving a person for dead and saying they're so strong and resilient, we're trying to force them into talking about something that they're not ready to talk about in depth yet. And so following their lead, letting them have openings. And if it seems like they want to talk, asking them if they want to, and giving them an actual opportunity to say yes or no. Like, I like to follow, like, you do not have to tell me if you don't feel like it. Like, it's totally fine if this is not the time to talk about that. And when they are ready, they can come back to you and talk to you about it. So I think that's really important if you're trying to support someone who has experienced trauma. Oh, here's the quote. Okay, yeah, the relational poverty conversation. All right, and now we'll just do one more of the anecdotes that they shared, and that'll be the end of the live, and I'll announce the giveaway winner. Thank you for everyone who's been putting in their Instagram handles. If you want to win this book, I'll reach out to the winner right after this live. There was an anecdote that that Oprah shared from her show. A man she interviewed who was in prison. He had killed someone. He was a murderer. And it was an ironic situation for Oprah because the man came from like pretty good background, it seemed like he was raised in the suburbs and things like that. I think his mom was like a stay-at-home mom, and his dad earned a good living, and it's kind of like, what happened, And basically Oprah over time asked him, because he ended up getting involved with gangs, and he was saying how like he felt like he was a part of something, like people cared about him in that gang, and he didn't feel the same at home because his mom seemed to be like very preoccupied and had a short temper and things like that, and that's what led him into being with the gang. And Oprah asked him, well, you said you wanted to be a doctor growing up. Why did you want to be a doctor? So he started talking about that. He's like, oh well, when we used to go to the doctor, my mom, it was always good around the doctor. Like she was always calm, never mad or anything. He was like, she was really nice to the doctor. And then he had this aha moment of like, and I guess I thought if I became a doctor, she would be nice to me.
Wow.
Like that was like in that moment, you had this man who literally had, I think he might have killed someone in prison. I might be getting that confused with How to Get Away with Murder, but he was definitely in prison and he did murder someone. But the fact that he wanted to be a doctor just to get his mother's approval, like he just wanted her, he associated her being nice with being at the doctor, so he wanted to be a doctor. And so I just thought that again was another wonderful anecdote to illustrate what happened to you and how it influenced our decisions. I know, Guadalupe, that was a really that was an Charsai, that was a really, really touching story that I was just like, wow, that's why I say if you haven't read this book, I do really recommend the audiobook, because you could hear him telling it. You can hear it in his voice and Oprah's response. He killed David with a gun and was convicted of second degree. I'm not sure who David. I'm not sure who David is, but yeah, I mean, I know that he did kill someone. So even in that situation, Oprah was saying how it was an humbling experience, because she was like, what do I have to learn from this person, who's done all these crimes? And she was like, I was so humbled in that experience. Like it made her reflect on the choices she made. And, I was thinking myself, like the choices I've made and how much of that is influenced by, what you're hoping to get the response from your parents or the people that matter to you. So that is the end of like me talking about the book. So now let's get to the giveaway element. Did we have a winner?
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who put their names in the raffle for this book. And the winner is Benitez.
Laura Benitez.
Congratulations, Laura. Congratulations. I'll be contacting you on Instagram tonight, and you can tell me your preference for how you would like to receive the book. And I did learn over Christmas how to send people audiobooks, because a lot of my friends want an audiobook. So I can get that to you soon if that's your preferred method. But thank you guys so much for joining. I love having these conversations with you. Some of you found the channel through like some of the commentary I do with reality TV. And I will be doing a season 4 video for those of you who have been asking for Love is Blind. But I really, really love these lives because, this is really, I feel like this is the smaller bit of the community who's like really just trying to focus on like self-growth and like being the best versions of ourselves. And not to say that the other people on this channel aren't dedicated to that, because I do believe that everyone or most of the people that comment are giving feedback in that way. But, I feel like these conversations just really, really stick with me. So thank you guys so much for being in here with me tonight. I love chatting with you, and I'll be announcing the next book. If you have ideas or suggestions for books in the Goodreads, in our Goodreads book club, I do have in the general section a book suggestions and request tab, so you can like put in books that you think would be a good fit for the book club, and we will pick our book for next month. I should probably announce the date for the next one now, even though I don't know what book.
Let's do it.
All right, so I typically like to do like the last Tuesday of the month.
So that would be the 25th.
April 25th. Let's do it. April 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We will be having our next live, and I will be announcing that book on YouTube. on the community tab, and I'll also be announcing it in Goodreads. So if you want to be a part of our mini discussions, I'll see you there. I love you guys so much. Thank you, everyone who said this was a great live. I appreciate you guys so much, and you guys made it a great live. So thank you. On your mind. One.